So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to talk a little bit about why I'm doing this step. So I sealed the car, painted the car, 3 coats of color and 3 coats of clear. In the restoration slash show car world, whatever you want to call it, you'd put many more coats of clear on it. That's why show cars and restored cars look as vibrant as they do, because there is just layer upon layer upon layer upon clear, which gives the car that insane depth and shine compared to your whatever street car you bought at a dealership that barely has a coat and a half of clear on it, which is kind of sad for what you pay for a new car. But anyway, there's a couple advantages of doing this step. When you start applying Clearcoat, especially in such a big project as this, doing a complete around the entire car, if you don't, and this car too has a lot of curves and different shapes as opposed to like just clearing a flat hood. Very easy to do, to control the clear, where with this you're holding the gun in many different directions to get to all these surfaces, and what ends up happening is the clear, you just can't make the clear lay down as good as, like I said, like a hood or something basic like that. Plus, I don't claim to be the greatest painter. It takes years and years and years of practice and skill to really get it perfect every time. And even veteran painters will tell you that it's always a learning experience, and you're never a master of it. You're always getting better, hopefully getting better and not struggling. But anyway, there's some advantage of doing this step. And one of the other the first advantage is once you start laying the clear down, and like I said, you're going through all these different directions and all these coves, you end up with, if you don't get your first or second coat of clear down, that it's laying down absolutely perfect, the more you put on it, the worse it's going to get. Dumping a third coat or a fourth coat of clear over a coarse coat of clear isn't going to fix it. It's just going to enhance how rough and coarse, or orange peeled, if you want to call it that, it's going to be. It's not going to, if you get your first coat down nice, great. Your second coat down nice, it's going to continue to be nice. But if the first or second coat aren't that great, it's not going to fix itself. Plus, if you start getting crazy trying to pour the clear on, especially something like this, that this car goes in every different direction, you're going to end up with runs all over the car, and that's can be a whole nother nightmare. So I have the 3 coats of clear on this, and the advantage is now I can sand this surface nice and smooth, and go and put 3 more coats on. But I'm starting on a very super smooth, super flat surface, so that when you do put your first coat of clear down, it's going to be able to flow out that much better on that smooth surface. The smoother the surface is, the better the product will flow over that panel. And that works with anything you're doing, whether it's primer over body filler, or the sealer over the primer. The smoother the first surface is, the next product that goes over the top of it is just going to lay down that much nicer. And you know, the nicer the first coat is, the nicer the second coat is, or the next step's going to be, the easier it's going to be. If you're constantly working with rough surfaces, it just creates more work. Another advantage of this step is I have some areas over the car that some dirt and such got in it, into the clear coat. Or if you have dirt in your base coat, this is also the time where you can solve that. Now, if the dirt is in the base coat, you don't want to sand through the clear into the base to get that piece of dirt out. To me, or the way I do it, again, I'm not telling you what's right or wrong, I'm telling you what I do and how I have been successful with these ideas. The piece of dirt might be in your base coat, so what I do is sand it out as best I can, but I don't want to sand into the base coat. I don't want to break through. And then what I'll come back with is my little touch-up gun with some color in it, and I'll just spot that area in to cover up if you can still see that dirt speck or what have you that's in the base. Now, if the dirt is in the clear, what I'll do is I'll use a little block. This is a nib file. Yep. This is a nib file. It's a very fine file for nibbing dirt specks in clear coat and such. But what I do is I take a piece of 600 grit sandpaper, stick it, and I stick it to this, and then I'll lightly block out, like I have a little piece of dirt right here, and I'll lightly block out that dirt speck. Now again, this is 600. I don't want it this coarse. I'm not going to go use 600 on this whole thing because, you know, the chances of burning through an edge are much greater. And you don't want to burn through, because wherever you burn through, you can't just put clear coat back over the burn through. You have to blend more color back in. This is a solid color, so doing it on this is much easier than doing it on a metallic color or one of these, you know, 3-stage or candy apple colors kind of thing. That can be a whole nother nightmare. But this is solid colors. It's quite easy to solve these little problems. But so you can fix a little, you know, some of these errors, especially if you have dirt in your base. If you do get a lot of dirt in your base coat, the best thing to do is to just stop altogether and let it sit as long as you can. Then come back, and if you want to sand your base coat, sand your dirt out of your base coat, and then reapply one more coat of base before you go to clear. And in some cases that isn't really achievable depending on your time frame of your job. So this is another way of, you know, just solving that by putting the clear coat on it, trapping that in there, and then just adding a little bit of color over those spots before you put your final clear coat over the top of it. And now you do want 6 coats of clear. I put 6 coats of clear on my projects, but obviously if you spot in a little bit of clear here, or a little bit of base here, a little bit of base here, you're obviously not going to have 6 coats of clear in that spot. But in the grand scheme of the whole job, there's going to be 6 coats of clear on it minus these few spots, which no one's ever really going to notice. It's not going to make the difference. It's just, you know, it's a way to fix the little problems to complete the job and to make it look as good as you can possibly make it look. Now, so what I'm going to show you now is how to sand it, which is you're just sanding it. You're just taking whatever texture that's in the clear coat and you're sanding all of that out. Hopefully the camera will pick up the texture, and I can show you a trick that I've learned for being able to see if you've gotten all the texture out. It's really bright in here, and actually being so bright and being such a light colored car, it's actually very difficult to see sometimes if you've sanded far enough or not. So I learned a little trick to help you see if you've gone far enough. So I'm going to get my 1000 grit on my DA, and this DA has a very tight orbit to it. This I use also for sanding clear when I'm buffing. But the good reason for using a DA with a tighter orbit is when you are sanding over edges, you have a less tendency of being too aggressive and cutting right through that edge. And again, then you have to put more color on it. Or if you're buffing, if you're in the buffing step, you want to use this DA, because when you're sanding the clear, you don't want to burn through, because then you're starting over. So that's why a tighter, the diameter that the pad oscillates. The DA will spin and it will oscillate at the same time, and this one has a tighter oscillation than my other DA, which has a much more, it's a larger, I think this is 3/16 oscillation, and the other one is I think 5/16. It doesn't seem like much, but when you're doing this, it can make a big difference and cause some more of those regrets nobody wants. So let's get to sanding, and I'll show you how it's all done. Okay, so I got this section sanded. I'm not sure how well we can see this. You might be able to see it right in here, where you can just still slightly see the graining in the panel, where it's not completely dull. There's still some shine left. Now, again, I don't know if the camera is going to be able to pick all this up, but I have lights on both sides of the booth. If I'm facing that direction, if I turn off the lights that are behind me, that helps to see across the panel and see where the shiny spots are and where the dull spots are. I'm sorry. Again, I don't know if the camera is going to be able to pick all that up. You can see it when you're doing it, so I'm going to try and do it with the camera. So we've turned this off. Now, if you look, well, actually, right in this area, we can still see speckles of shine. And this right here, it's all shiny. It's not sanded enough yet, but where you don't see any shine, as I said, the camera might be hard for me to get it with the camera, but there's an area right in here that I can still see a lot of little shiny speckles that aren't sanded well enough. Down in here, there's still some spots. See these little rings around where the emblem goes. That's not a big deal. I wouldn't get too carried away with that because the emblem goes over that. But that's how you know if you've gone far, far enough. Now, here again, this is even, I would say, acceptable enough to re-clear this panel and achieve what we're trying to achieve. The idea, though, is to get as much of the texture out of the panel for the next 3 coats of clear. So it is starting with an absolutely perfect surface. So, if you're afraid of sanding too aggressively and cutting through, then you can stop there. What I would then recommend after that, if you're going to stop there, is just take a basic light gray scuff pad and then scuff over the whole area. If you still have some shiny spots that you're afraid to sand real aggressive, even like areas like this, you want to be careful over these. I got a nice trying to see if you can see it. A nice gnarly piece of dirt. It has to be right on the body line. That's the restoration world. It's just it couldn't be on a nice flat area. It has to be right there, just to give me a headache. And now here again, I don't know if we can see it. Trying to show. Turn this light back on. Maybe that'll help. I've got a couple little specks of dirt. One is right here, and one is right here. And I kind of dug into them a little bit with the 600, but I don't want to go any further. I don't want to dig a nasty crater in that. So I'm just gonna spot some color over those spots, over those little specks. I've also done in the past, I've just taken a small, very tiny little touch-up swab with a dab of color on it and dabbed over spots like that. Let the base coat dry really well, sanded it, and then cleared it instead of, spotting in all the color. And it tends to work. And again, this is a solid color, so it makes life a little easier. So that's kind of the reason why this step is getting done. And one of the other things is when you're painting cars like this, especially to this level, you're putting on a lot of material, a lot of solvents, which is why in this case I put the sealer coat on last Friday afternoon and let that cure completely. Came in on Saturday morning, sanded that, because you're allowing all the chemicals, all the gases to come out. If you do these kind of paint jobs and you put too much material on too fast, you could have all kinds of different reactions, whether the base coat could curl, you could get solvent pop in the clear coat. Various things can happen. So with these paint chemicals, you kind of want to go again, and if time allows. I mean, I'm here doing this, in my own shop, running my own business, doing things how I want to do them, because I don't want to do things twice. So if doing them a little slower, gives you a better result without error, then to me that's a safer bet than trying to bang something out and end up having some kind of horrible thing go wrong in your job. The further along a restoration goes, this is not the time that I want to have problems. This is why a lot of times in my shop you'll see a car sitting here and it'll be in primer and be in primer and be in primer for a long time. Not because I don't want to work on it or what have you. It's because I wait until the very end to when it's ready to be worked on and ready to be painted, to paint it, because having a painted car sitting around the shop, again, is just another element of possible disaster. So I want to get a car painted, and when I know I'm going to paint it, get it together and get it out the door, that's when I want to paint them. Painting things and having painted parts sitting around and painted cars sitting around, you just, you know, if something does happen, that's when things get expensive, that's when things get costly, and that's when you're working in circles, which I don't like to do either. I like to do things planned out well, do it smart, and do it once. So that tends to make my customers paying the bill a lot happier too, and it's also, I don't have to explain myself of why I'm doing things multiple times. Especially when my customers do frequent the shop, I don't want to. Last thing I want to see, or thing I want them to see, is me doing something twice and looking silly. So planning is all a big part of this. But that's where we are on this. I'm going to go ahead and finish sanding the entire car and get my clear coat on it. And that's what's happening. All right, so going around whole car with 1000 grit and a scuff pad. There's a bunch of specks and spots that I'll have to throw some base coat on. And going back to what I said earlier about adding more base coat over the clear, doesn't give you as much depth on those spots. But thing to remember is I've already sanded, let's say I've already sanded one of the coats off of clear right now to get it back to being flat. So once I base it and add that layer, I'll be putting 3 more coats on top of that. But after I put those 3 coats on, since I'm going over this very smooth surface, the goal is to not have to sand nearly as hard to get the clear flat again. So you won't be taking as much off when you sand to buff it. So you really don't, adding that little bit of base, can fix the problems you have, but it doesn't take away from the overall finish of the project. So now I need to blow this thing off and get it cleaned up and get my 3 coats of clear back on it.